We sleep, we dream, with no time in between. We never stop, whistling or chanting the heat of the night. We sing, the spirit is clean, from north and south. We come from east and west, breathing as one, living in faith or dying in flame. We love, our mission is blessed. We fight for you, for freedom unforeseen. Thinking as one, rolling along to the beat of the drum. We march, the Black Cross machine. We rise, we roll, we walk and we stand tall. We never fall, as big as the sky, as far as the dawn. We walk and we never fall. We stand alone, but soon the day will come when freedom rings. We'll meet again now eternally, and walk once more as one. We rise, we grow, we walk and we stand tall. We never fall, as big as the sky, as far as the dawn. We walk and we do not fall. We sleep, we dream, with no time in between. We never stop, whistling or chanting the heat of the night. We sing, the spirit is clean, from north and south. We come from east and west, breathing as one, living in faith or dying in flame. We love, our mission is blessed. We fight for you, for freedom unforeseen. Thinking as one, rolling along to the beat of the drum. We march, the Black Cross machine. We rise, we roll, we walk and we stand tall. We rise, we grow, we walk and we stand tall. We never fall, as big as the sky, as far as the dawn. We walk and we do not fall. We sleep, we dream, with no time in between. We never stop, whistling or chanting the heat of the night. We sing, the spirit is clean, from north and south. We come from east and west, breathing as one, living in faith or dying in flame. We love, our mission is blessed. We fight for you, for freedom unforeseen, thinking as one, rolling along to the beat of the drum. We march the Black Cross machine. We rise, we roll, we walk and we stand tall. We never fall, as big as the sky, as far as the dawn. We walk and we never fall. We stand alone, but soon the day will come when freedom rings. We'll meet again now eternally, and walk once more as one. We rise, we grow, we walk and we stand tall. We never fall, as big as the sky, as far as the dawn. We walk and we do not fall. We sleep, we dream, with no time in between. We never stop, whistling or chanting the heat of the night. We sing, the spirit is clean, from north and south. We come from east and west, breathing as one, living in faith or dying we never fall. As big as the sky, as far as the dawn. We walk, and we do not fall. We sleep, we dream, with no time in between. We never stop, whistling or chanting the heat of the night. We sing, the spirit is clean. From north and south, we come from east and west, breathing as one, living in faith or dying in flame. We love, our mission is blessed. We fight for you, for freedom unforeseen. Thinking as one, rolling along to the beat of the drum. We march the Black Cross machine. We rise, we roll, we walk and we stand tall. We never fall, as big as the sky, as far as the dawn. We walk and we never fall.
This is in the indictment.
Yeah, I see.
Right? Is Jose in? I can't hear him. Am I live? Good morning, folks. Today is day 7 of Julian Assange's extradition hearing. It was a very interesting morning. We heard from journalist John Goetz from Der Spiegel, who was publishing material in partnership with WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. The main evidence discussed was regarding if there were any lives put at risk, where Mr. Goetz made a reference to the Manning case and the Brigadier General Bob Carr saying that under oath in the Chelsea Manning case that there was no people harmed by these publications. And we're waiting for Mr. Christian Grafson, who I think is almost ready to go live for a more up-to-date statement. So I will leave you here and come back to you in a few minutes.
I have to stay.
We rise, we grow, we walk and we stand tall. We never fall, as big as the sky, as far as the dawn. We walk and we do not fall. We sleep, we dream, with no time in between.
Kristen, tell us what happened this morning.
Well, this morning we heard testimony from the former Spiegel journalist John Goetz. He, of course, was part of the media alliance in the publications of the Afghan war documents and the diplomatic cables in 2010 and worked on these publications. So he was basically telling his experience about the extensive redaction process that was in place, that basically countering the narrative which is often being presented, and especially by the U.S. administration, that this was some kind of a dumping, irresponsible one. On the contrary, he said this was a very rigorous reduction process that WikiLeaks went into in collaboration with their media partners. So that it was very important to get that established in the courtroom. He was also trying to get across, actually, a very important statement, but was stopped by the prosecution, by John Lewis, on behalf of the United States. That was basically what he had said publicly before, but John Lewis did not want to be wanted heard in the courtroom this morning. And I know what the reference was. It was a discussion about what was said and not said in a 10 years ago at a restaurant. You might have heard about the citation. John Lewis himself has cited it, I think, 2 times. A part of the book written by Luke Harding and David Lee, the Guardian journalists, where wrongfully they state that Julian said something along the line that informants deserve to die. An outrageous thing that Julian has contested, and so has John Goetz publicly. Now, when Mark Summers, on behalf of Julian, wanted to discuss that in the courtroom this morning, to have that on record, immediately the opposition raised and wanted that stopped, which is extraordinary because John Lewis himself has, as I said, I think twice cited that passage from that Guardian book. So he has been asking witnesses about it who weren't there, but he didn't want to hear testimony from the person who was actually there at the table and said, I heard no such thing. Of course, it's a very important thing to have on record in the courtroom. Now, if we go further, John Gertz was telling the story, the Al-Masri story, Kali Al-Masri, a German citizen who was kidnapped in Macedonia and renditioned to a CIA black site where he was tortured, sodomized, and then in the end he was dumped on the side of the road in Albania. That is a story that was covered in the German press and was covered by John Gertz prior to 2010, prior to the publication of the WikiLeaks documents. And his coverage, which he got an award for, led to an arrest warrant being issued against CIA officers who took part in that outrageous rendition. However, they never understood why the German government didn't pursue the case harder. The arrest warrant was never issued in the United States, for example, and they failed to understand why that didn't happen. But when the diplomatic cables were released and they got access to the diplomatic cables, they got the answer. They got the answer that the United States government put a huge pressure on the German government to stop anything like that happening. They did not want that to take any further, and if I remember correctly, the document stated that that the Americans basically would threaten the German government that they would have serious repercussions if they would issue the arrest warrants in the United States. So now we know, because of the Cablegate release, because of the documents that came out of the diplomatic cables, confirming the great length that the American government was willing to go in basically threaten the government of Germany if they dare to go and take this any further. And that kind of position we are seeing echoing again here today, because in fact Al-Masri was supposed to testify here, originally by video link, but the prosecution wanted his testimony to be basically in written format and read out in the courtroom. But this morning there was a huge debate before the break here now, instigated by the US government, by the prosecution, that they only wanted to hear part of his testimony. And they are objecting to the fact that objecting to the witnesses be able to talk about being tortured by the CIA. They don't want that presented in the courtroom. And they talk about alleged torture, which I think is outrageous, because I think it's fairly well established what went on in the CIA torture program. So that's where we're at. The US government doesn't want to hear the truth in the courtroom, doesn't want to hear the evidence of CIA torture and the relevance in the entire case.
There's also been some sort of deceitful tactics concerning the chronology of what happened between August and September 2011, is it, or 2010?
2011. Yes, there are repeated attempts by the prosecution, by the United States lawyers to obfuscate what actually happened. They want to cast doubt on the fact, which is well established and well known, that when the unredacted diplomatic cables were finally released in September of 2010 in entirety, that was not the primary release. That was a secondary release, because they were published first on an American-based website in August. they were trying to cast doubt on that and saying that before that release there was a partial release of the entire cable by WikiLeaks, but they were all unclassified cables. So the release of the classified cables in September of 2011 came as a secondary publication, came after that had already been released by an American-based website. And it was obvious that the opposition didn't want to hear what led to this decision, what came first. They didn't want to hear the timeline being sort of pointed out, and the fact that actually the whole process towards that decision was started by an incredible mishap or mistake or stupidity by the two Guardian journalists that I talked about earlier, Luke Harding and David Lee, who co-wrote a book and actually published in the book the password to an encrypted file containing the entire diplomatic cable cache. A password that they had been asked to protect so severely that originally even Julian did not give that to the Guardian journalist in entirety in writing, whispered part of the password in the ear of the journalist and wrote out the rest of it. Should have been obvious. It was not to be published. But in the end, the Guardian journalist put it as a header in the book. Outrageous one.
And gets talked about people's life actually not being put at risk at all by these publications.
There's no evidence of it now 10 years later. We heard evidence to the contrary actually presented by the Pentagon official in 2013 in a Chelsea Manning trial. And now 7 years on, there's not been a single incident reported where anybody has been harmed as a result of the publications in 2010, 2011. No harm at all. And as I've said repeatedly before, any discussion about possible harm should be weighted against the actual harm that is outlined and published and exposed in the documents that WikiLeaks published, including evidence pertaining to the outrageous torture program by the CIA.
Sorry, just one last question about this harm. It is the United States government who actually said,
Yes.
under oath, no harm was caused by these publications.
Robert Card.
Under oath in the Chelsea Manning trial, a Pentagon official was called to testify and had to admit that there was no incident of any harm as a result of the publications by WikiLeaks in 2010, 2011. The publication of the documents that lie at the heart of the indictment against Julian Assange.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Bravo.
Thank you.
We rise, we grow, we walk and we stand tall. We never fall, as big as the sky, as far as the dawn. We walk and we do not fall. We sleep, we dream, with no time in between. We never stop, whistling or chanting the heat of the night. We march to that cross machine.